Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Instagram live broadcast. I am your host, proprietor Jason Haas. I am extremely excited for my guest this week. It is, of course, Chef Charlie Palmer, who is an icon in American cooking, but is also one of the chefs who I think is most interested and most knowledgeable about wine. You might think that that would be the case with all chefs, but in my experience, it's not. And of course, he has been doing amazing work cooking in various parts of the United States for 4 decades. But the exciting news for us is that he will be opening a couple of outlets in Paso Robles in coming months. So I cannot wait for you to get a chance to hear from him. But while we wait for people to join, as I always do, I will show you a few pictures as to what's going on here at the winery. And the big news for us is that we've started harvesting. So this is one of the first bins that we got in. This is actually some Grenache, which is going into our Patelin Rosé program. I'll show you what those look like on the crush pad also. You can see the relatively pale color. It doesn't matter for direct press rosé. We'll get darker Grenache for our red wines. We have lots of stuff which is still out on the vines. Some of it is looking pretty close to ready, like this is some Syrah. We've also got some Bourboulon that looks like it's getting there. Probably be in sometime in the next couple of weeks. But it's important to remember that things are on a continuum here. So it's not like everything is ready. And in fact, there's some stuff which is still going through veraison. So the Mourvedre is, of course, one of the latest grapes to come in. So it is not something that we expect before mid-October. And it is, it's still some green in some spots. Also show you some Counoise. That, too, is still coloring up. So just accepted the invitation on his end. Send through one on my end, too. Hello, Chef.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm not in the vineyard though. You're in the vineyard. I'm not.
So where are you joining from?
I am at the new Appalachian Healdsburg Hotel.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How much time are you spending out in California at this point?
A lot, a lot. Well, we've Healdsburg has been our home for the last 24 years. So but always maintain a home in New York City, which I've always had. So.
Of course. Amazing. Well, I'm not sure if you were on at the very beginning when I gave a quick intro, but one of the things that I'm super excited to talk to you about is that, like, not only are you an icon in American chefing world, chefing circles, you are one of the relatively rare chefs who actually has been hands-on in making wine as well. And I want to talk to you about that, but I'd love to start at the beginning and say,
Sure.
like, did you know when you were growing up, did you know you wanted to be a chef?
Yeah, I started cooking when I was very, very young. I wouldn't call it professionally, but I started really getting serious about food when I was like 14 or 15. And that was kind of peaked by my neighbor in the small town I grew up with. When I grew up in the small town of Smyrna, New York, which is population of probably 236 people. So when you say small town, we're talking seriously small town. But anyways, our neighbor was the home ec teacher in our high school, so and a good friend, and always cooking at her house. So I ended up there because I came from a big family, and dinner was more like a free for all than than anything formal. Um, but and then I started, started cooking actually at the Colgate Inn, which is owned by Colgate University, and started washing pots and as usual, pots and pans and dishes. And then one day a prep cook didn't show up, and for whatever reason, there was a young Swiss chef there at the time, Philippe, and I don't know how he ended up in Hamilton, New York, but
Right.
anyways. Uh, and as it goes, like you don't really realize you're learning from someone until years later when you think, oh my God, this guy was a real professional, real classically trained chef.
Yeah.
And I was learning things I had no idea, right? So started prepping vegetables, and then I became the brunch guy because nobody wants to work brunch.
Right.
And Philippe said, "Well, look, if you'll do the brunch thing and come in at 5:30 on Saturday and Sunday mornings, I'll give you a room in a hotel. You can stay overnight." So as a 16-year-old kid, that was a pretty
Uh-huh.
attractive thing, back then. And I had to come in and put the. We used to do these steamship rounds of beef that had to go in the oven because it took 4 hours to cook this thing, early morning. So.
The stamina of
That was
youth.
that was my beginning. Yep, and then right from there, I went to the Culinary Institute in Hyde Park, and that became my alma mater, and still is my true love. I've been on the board of trustees of the school for many years. I was the chairman of the board of trustees for many years. So now I'm a trustee emeriti.
Right.
So
Perfect. Even better.
yeah,
All of the honor and less work.
yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious. Did you have a like when did you have a formative wine experience?
I was always, my entire career as a chef really probably more than a lot of chefs, really evolved around wine, and part of that came from working in France and working in Burgundy specifically.
Right.
But, I always had a love of wine, and I think when I opened my first restaurant, Aureole in New York, it was my own restaurant that I opened. It was really my dream and my hope is to represent California wine specifically because I'm a very American guy. I'm about American food, and I thought that we're now producing, and that was in 1988, so that was quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was great for me to be able to say that we're the first restaurant in New York City to really focus and really represent, especially California wines, American wines from all over, but obviously most of it was California, Napa, Sonoma, back then, to its fullest, abilities. They're really showing the wines where they should be shown, side by side with the great vintages from all over the world. Whether it be French wines, Italian wines, that kind of thing. So that's what we did, and we became quite known for
Yeah.
depth in all types of wines from California, especially.
Do you have an aha wine, a wine that you remember tasting and saying, "Oh man, now I get it" for the first time, or did it happen more gradually?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of aha moments, with wines. I mean, I can remember one of my first times in Burgundy. This was a tasting at Etienne Sauzet,
Yeah. Okay.
white Burgundy, specifically white Burgundies, and it's just a memorable tasting because first of all, I tried to go as a kid back then, uh, to go there and taste. They were like, "Nah, we don't do it." It's not like California, right? It's
No,
totally different. And
particularly Burgundy.
I remember in my broken French, because my French is still not very good, but he said the only way I would do that, he said, if you come at 8 o'clock in the morning and promise me that you're not going to have anything before that. You can't drink coffee before you come. Don't brush your teeth. They're very specific, that kind of thing. And I remember sitting in this not so glamorous cellar with Etienne and a couple of other people and tasting incredible wines like freezing cold, like in the morning like this. And I think, this is why, someone like that, becomes such a great winemaker because he's very specific about, how he wants people to perceive the wines too. And but that was a moment I was like, okay, I get this, right? And still is one of my favorite producers of especially white burgundies and
And
everything. So
that's a producer that my dad imported forever. I mean, still Vineyard
yeah,
Brands is still the
yeah,
importer for Sauzet. So I know those
yeah,
wines well. They're amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, okay, can you talk a little bit about a few of the concepts that are a part of the Charlie Palmer collective now? Because it's obviously it's more than just one place. It's more than just one concept. So I'd love you to sort of share a little bit about what that looks like.
Sure. Well, first of all, we have the CPC. We call it the collective, which is the bars and restaurants under that umbrella. And today we have, let's see, one, two, I think we have what, 12 operating outlets, restaurants, rooftop bars, and a lot of them are relationships with different hotels, so we've kind of become that brand. And that started way back with the Four Seasons many, many years ago. I had Aureole at Mandalay Bay, for
Right.
25 years also. And those collaborations with great hotels and that kind of thing. And then today, we have a couple new projects, as you know, down in Paso. We're
Yeah.
working on and working hard to make come to life. And then on the other side of things, we have Appalachian Hotels, which is my hotel brand, which is really a brand that's immersed in food and beverage.
Okay.
So we're very different than other hotel brands and management companies that talk about food being a big part of it and everything like that. Which hopefully any great hotel does have great food and great beverage and great wine lists and all that. But we don't just talk about it; we do it. And so we have, Lodi is really the first Appalachian hotel property that we took over a property, and now it is Appalachian Lodi. Redid that with two great uh, food and beverage outlets. One is Maison Lodi, which is more like a casual marketplace cafe, whatever. And what we focus on there is really local produced wines,
Hmm.
in the
Cool.
cafe itself. Yeah. And then we have Americana House, where the wine list, which is a very American restaurant in a way that's very much about what's happening in Lodi today. What's being raised, what's being grown. Again, the wines of Lodi specifically, but also side by side again with the greatest wines in the world. Because I think that's the best way to really put a wine region on the map, is showing people through a wine list or through how we talk about it. It's like these are wines that belong alongside the greatest wines of the world, and greatest wines in California too, because Lodi obviously is not as well known as Napa or Sonoma or even Paso in that sense. But I think that's that's what we're trying to do there in Lodi. And
I
that'll
think
be the
it's a
same thing in Paso. I've known over the years so many great wineries in Paso, and what's happening there. But I think we can expand on that. We can help raise Paso as a wine region in the same ways.
Yeah, I would love you to talk a little bit about your plans for
Yeah.
Paso. I had planned to ask you about that a little later in the conversation, but we've touched on it a
Yeah.
couple of times. So, do you want to share what the plans are?
Yeah, sure. So we've been involved when CPC. We've been involved with the project since KSL purchased the Paso Robles Inn and the Piccolo, which some people know that's the same property ownership, but it is that whole campus, I call it, there. And what we're doing there is really kind of re-envisioning all of the food and beverage outlets, starting with the rooftop at the Piccolo. And that's in process right now, being renovated and kind of re-envisioned, the bar, rooftop bar, but really lively, really a great place, whether it's sunset or later on at night, really a great venue there with a very aggressive craft cocktail program there. And then secondly, in the main building of the Paso Robles Inn, um, we'll be re-envisioning Cattleman's Lounge will become the Cattleman's Bar.
Okay.
And I think looking that is really looking at the heritage of what that meant to Paso, but also to that whole region, because it's a very cool cowboy bar that kind of lost its way for many, many years and different ownership and stuff like that. So our goal there is to return that to this amazing cocktail bar, but really in a sense of a cowboy bar. With the decor changes, stuff like that. But even the menus and the drinks, I want it to be. That's where you'll find the greatest, bourbons and Manhattans and things like that. That
Cool.
you would think, if you wear a cowboy hat, that's what you want to drink. Start with, and then probably the wine program there is going to be really more focused on heavier red wines and things like that. And then a menu of snacky type items, but great burgers and things that you would expect
Cool.
in that environment. And then the main restaurant in that building, which is on the ground floor, is going to be totally re-envisioned. It's now called the Steakhouse. It's going to be re-envisioned. It's going to be called the Pass, really representing, the oaks and the passage of the oaks in the area, that kind of thing. And but it's going to be really great indoor, outdoor, live fire grills, and really not a steakhouse, but really representing again, what we're, what we think is the most important and the most exciting things about what's in Paso. Like all the seafood will be coming from Morro Bay or that side of the coast there, which is great because you got the Morro Bay oyster guys and
Yep.
all that stuff happening as we speak. So that will probably come to life spring of next year. After the holidays, we'll close it down and then totally renovate. But we're creating a whole outdoor seating area right there in front of the main building. So right at street level. Which
Cool.
will be very welcoming, not only to every passerby, but the to the town green itself. Which is kind of like situated right on the end of it.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean it's such a
really cool.
prime location, and it's
Yeah, it is.
been. I think it's been a missed opportunity for all 23 of the years that I've been out here. Like
Yeah.
it's never really been a place that has been attractive to locals or to the local wine industry. So like I can't tell you how excited I am, and everybody I talk to is to have you coming in there and putting your own stamp on it.
Yeah. No, we're excited, and we're doing culinary gardens like we do in every Appalachian hotel too. As culinary gardens on property, we'll have like 26 uh, beds raising everything, every kind of herb, obviously that type of thing, but also a good amount of like produce and things like that right on
Yeah.
property. And we're just exploring really the relationships with local beef producers because that's
Right.
famous for it was a ranching town, it still is in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I grew up on a dairy farm, but we started raising beef cattle way back when, Angus in upstate New York, which is not opportunity. Now there's probably more beef cattle in upstate New York, and people don't know this than there are dairy cattle,
Uh,
honestly. But all the dairy goes to Chobani, and the beef
right.
comes to New York City. But anyways, same thing down there, and it's been interesting to see like there's a lot of heritage there, a lot of generational farming
Yep.
and ranching going on, which I love that.
And one of the things that I often joke to people is that like the cowboy hats out in Paso Robles are not being worn ironically. I mean, those are probably on an actual cowboy.
Exactly, and that's where we're going to encourage that at the Cattleman's Bar. So yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so like there are lots of chefs who love wine and who study wine, but I don't know that there are a lot of chefs who've actually made 18 vintages of wine. Can you talk a little bit about your own winemaking project?
Yeah, for sure. When way back when we moved when I moved the family from Manhattan to Healdsburg, one of my dreams was always the dream is to grow grapes and make my own wine. And that was made possible by Clay Morrison and Tom Morrison, his dad, when we first moved out here, and Tom was very kind to help me figure out what we wanted to grow. I knew I wanted to grow Pinot, And and I got great cuttings from Tom Rocchioli. So it kind of started out with some really good rootstock. I had a good place to start. But that vineyard, which is only about 3.5 acres,
Huh.
is now in its 20th year. So it's 20 years old, that vineyard. It's 4 different blocks. It's planted to 4 different clones or 4 different varietals. So it's fun. And we keep it all separate when we harvest, which just happened 2 days ago.
Cool.
So
Congratulations.
yeah, I get involved in that. I mean, the guys kind of laugh. They come and pick my vineyard literally in 45 minutes. Like when I'm out there, 5:30 in the morning with the lights on. They're
Right.
picking, and I was like, this is the greatest thing. I mean, to me, it's amazing, right? It is, and then to be able to get over to the winery. Well, yeah, yesterday afternoon and do some punch downs in a small batch fermentation. But what we do is Clay and I also have contracts with Caligari on East Side Road, which is a good friend of mine, Don Caligari. So we have fruit from East Side Road, Caligari's vineyards. We have a small amount of fruit coming every year from Dutton Ranch, the Campbell Vineyard over closer to the coast. And then on from time to time, we get like this year, we're getting about probably 6 tons from Tom Rocchioli from the
Cool.
Sweetwater Vineyard. So anyways, we keep it all separately, and then we create the blend together, which is, for me is is really great part of like being able to like, the nuance and also looking at every vintage. When people say candidly or like off the cuff like, oh, every vintage is different. I live that now. I really understand that now because every vintage is incredibly different. It's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
I'll be sometimes. I was at what not last year, the year before. uh, I said to Clay, I think like my vineyard, it looked so bad because the heat was on this stuff. And then I said, like, is it even worth picking this, right? Should we just drop the fruit? He's like, no, 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 no. And this sugar content. And actually it was so concentrated and so different than every other year that
Right.
to me it was like, wow, that really comes to life. It brings things to life when you really experience it from vintage to vintage and look at how different it is, and then of course deal with it too. So
Yeah.
I am by no means an expert, but I understand like the exposure and the amount of pruning, how many leaves to leave on, take off, that kind of thing to get what you want, right? So to me that's super exciting. It's not a lot different than cooking. Like when you're trying to get to a certain place, it's like it's figuring out, again, like everybody says, you have to start with the very best ingredients, right? That's our goal. If we can get the very best ingredients, no matter what it is, right? Whether it's a grape that's going into the wine or whether it's a scallop that's coming right out of the water. If you start with pristine ingredients, um, you unless you screw it up in the kitchen or in the winery, you're going to have a great product. It's just a matter of how great it's going to be. So I love that idea and the simplicity of it, but also, the complexity of making sure to check all the boxes and being,
Right.
check those sugar levels like 5 days in a row. Like Emma, the winemaker, that really is involved in making this Pinot at Morrison. Emma's there every day in the morning checking it. Not every other day, every day. Like we're going to hit that number and then we're going to pick, right? And I just think that's so cool to be able to do that and make vintage after vintage that I think are gets better every year. It really does. And be able to go back and taste wines from '08, '06. I think it was 2006 was the first vintage. And I still have very few bottles of that left. So I'm trying to preserve a few. It's hard to do, because we're not cellar kings. We drink wine, So
Right.
yeah.
Cool. So, given your obviously like great experience as a chef and your experience as a winemaker, I'm curious, have you like if you had to pick like remarkable and successful food and wine pairing that you've done. I'm curious what one would be. I'm sure there must be lots, but if there's one fun one that stands out, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, well, I think one pairing became in years and years ago, because now we're in our 18th year, is, you know, that really was the thing with pigs and Pinot. You know, the pairing of pork and all the things you think about with pork, which is that luscious fattiness, you know, that
Yep.
in a lot of cases saltiness of cured meats, cured hams, things like that. um, the foil of the fruit from Pinot Noir, that upfront fruit, and that really, like, you know, back palate of like very soft tannins and things like that, that really complement pork specifically together. All types of pork, but, you know, especially cured meats and things like that. But, and, you know, that became, you know, not expectedly, but, you know, I started a dinner for Pigs and Pinot, that became Pigs and Pinot, a fundraising dinner, because the school my kids went to wanted to build a library. And they said to me, you know, Mr. Auction Guy, or Mr. Raise some money for us kind of thing. They said, could you help us raise some money to build this library and that kind of thing? I said, oh, sure. So I got together with Tom and a bunch of winemakers. I said, we're going to do a dinner. We're going to call it Pigs and Pinot. Pork and Pinot Noir, guys. Everybody's in, and everybody's like, yeah, this is great, right? But, you know, it's a simple idea became a huge thing. I mean, you know, year after year, and, you know, pairing after pairing, you know, and that really kind of brings that, you know, that true pairing of, like we say, like what was the perfect pairing I felt with, to a whole different level. Because then you got 20 different chefs, you know, putting their take on it, like how they see it happening, what Pinot
Yep.
they like with this, you know, because, you know, every wine is different too. Because, you know, you got really soft, and, you know, things. You got the big, you know, the Costa Browns, or the, you
Right.
know, Michael Brown now with Cirque, and making these big Pinots, big, you know, they can handle roast pork and all kinds of spices and everything like that, you know. So,
And
you know,
and how much fun is that for like the guests also? Like no wonder it's successful. That sounds like
yeah,
such a
exactly.
great
They
event.
love it. They love it. I mean, people, you know, that event has now become a 2 year event. Now this will be transitioning this year in March to our new hotel property here, because we got a little more space. Uh, go to my foundation, which is all the money goes to scholarships, both at the CIA, wine scholarships, wine education, all kinds of education for the next generation of what we are today. Winemakers, wine business people, chefs, restaurateurs, you know, because we need to give back. We always do, but, you know, now it's taking it to the next level. You know, we
Amazing.
need to really get serious about this. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, I cannot believe that it has been half an hour, but it has been half an hour. I want to be sensitive to your time. So, if people want to learn more about what you're doing through Charlie Palmer Collective, or through the hotels, or through your wine, or through your foundation, how do people learn more?
Well, the main website, charliepalmer.com, you know, is my site, and that's CPC's site. All of our restaurants are on there. Everything that's happening is very local on there. And then, of course, Appellation's website is really something that everybody should take a look at, because, you know, we're just launching it. It's brand new. It's very exciting, and I think the content there, whether you come and stay with us or dine with us or whatever, that's great. But the content on this website will continue to grow and build, including why, you know, we're gonna do live streaming from a demo kitchen that I just finished setting up, and, you know, we'll be doing podcasts. We'll have you on our podcast too. You know, we'll do back and forth, but it's really going to be totally immersed in food and wine and hospitality. So,
So cool.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, Chef Charlie Palmer, thank you so much for taking a little time out of your Wednesday to join us, and can't wait to see you down here in Paso. So excited to
Yeah,
have you
we'll
have you
be
come
down
into
there
our
in a
town.
couple of weeks. Yeah, we'll do. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Cheers, everybody.
Take care.